Welcome to Whispers of History, the channel where the stories don't shout and the past prefers to mumble itself to sleep. If you've come here to wind down, drift off, or just escape the noise of modern life for a while, you're in the right place. Tonight's slow unraveling of forgotten beauty is titled, How Artists Hid Elephants in Teacup Designs. So pull the blanket a little, dim the screen light, and before we forget, feel free to like and subscribe if this kind of storytelling helps you breathe a little deeper. We'd also love to know. So where are you listening from, and what time is it over there? Well, you'd be surprised how many of us are staring at the ceiling at 3:17 a.m. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. This is the kind of story where, honestly, you probably won't make it through the day. But that's okay, sleep was always part of the plan. You walk into the cool shadow of a marble corridor barefoot, because shoes feel too modern right now. The air smells faintly of jasmine, wet stone, and some kind of old ink that probably once had prestige, but now just smells like a library with commitment issues. Your fingers trail along the carved wall, past curly cues and lotus petals chipped by time or maybe just a bored noble's rings. You're in capital of the empire for about as long as a modern apartment lease. But let's not rush. This is a place that takes its time with everything. Down the hall, a low hum of voices murmurs through the sandstone, a soft chant from the artist's quarter, where the painters sit cross-legged with brushes fine enough to paint eyelashes on ants. Or elephants in teacups, depending on your taste. You duck under an archway, the stone still warm from a sun that's just taken its final bow behind the hills. Inside, there's a room no bigger than a large closet, but it holds more silence than 1,000 temples. You've arrived at the Imperial Workshop. Inside, artists sit in a circle, bent low over ivory-colored sheets no thicker than a thought. Their wrists don't move much, it's all in the fingers. They dip squirrel hair brushes into pigments made of crushed lapis lazuli and powdered emeralds. It's like alchemy, but for aesthetics. And there, on the corner of a miniature painting no bigger than a walnut shell, someone is finishing an elephant. Not a big one, just a trunk. In the negative space of a curling vine. That's the thing about art. It's subtle. Subtle like a joke whispered under breath at a royal banquet, meant to be missed by most, but unforgettable to the one who catches it. The emperor who sponsored most of this artistic detail was obsessed with miniatures. He couldn't read much due to his dyslexia, though scholars still argue over whether it was that or political myth-making. But he could see everything. One major historical fact. Under the miniature style became a blend of Persian refinement, Indian narrative warmth, and just enough whimsy to make a squirrel look smug. And here's your obscure fact. Some artists used wasp wings as paint filters, pressing pigment through the translucent texture to achieve a speckled fade. Because brushes are for amateurs. The floor here is cold. You feel it in your bones a little, but it also grounds you. It tells you that this wasn't a fantasy. These people really sat here for hours, quiet, focused, probably hungry. You sit beside them now, invisible but welcome, watching an elephant's ear emerge behind the petals of a jasmine bush that no one will notice unless they squint, hold their breath, and fall in love. And you're starting to sink into that same stillness. A soft breeze nudges the curtain beside you. It doesn't come from the window, that's a painted curtain, which is a little awkward, but we'll allow it. You walk a little further, deeper into the studio quarters, where stories aren't just told, they're inked into immortality, one absurdly tiny dot at a time. There's an artist lining back, cracking his knuckles like he's just negotiated peace with his own spine. His name might be or both real miniature painters under reign. But no one here wears name tags, and historical certainty is a luxury best left to textbooks. He's painting a garden scene. On a plate. Well, it will be a plate once the potters are done. Right now it's a disc of white clay that looks like an oversized communion wafer. The image is delicate, roses, parrots, a prince whose feet don't quite obey the laws of physics. But there's a trick here. If you hold the plate to the light at just the right angle, the branches of the tree morph into the silhouette of an elephant kneeling. A secret homage to the royal elephant who was once so beloved. He had his own embroidered saddle and reportedly better meals than most nobles. And here's your historical fact. Court artists often inserted symbolic animals into everyday as subtle gestures of loyalty, power, or satire. Elephants especially were markers of imperial strength, but hiding them in a teacup, that was cheeky brilliance. The weird tidbit, some artists used crushed fireflies to make glow-in-the-dark pigment for nighttime manuscripts. Just enough glow to read, not enough to impress a raccoon. You wander past shelves filled with stacked porcelain. Each cup is a riddle. One features a seemingly innocent vine, but if you count the leaves, they match the number of suns once banished for disloyalty. Was it a design or a jab? Historians still debate whether the symbolism was intentional or an accidental conspiracy theory from overly poetic minds. You bend low to examine one cup. The rim is painted with such fine strokes it almost hums. And right there in the loop of a floral motif is an elephant's eye. While you blink, it disappears. So sometimes beauty doesn't care if you notice it. Sometimes it just exists because someone once had the patience to make it. And just like that, your own breath slows down. You're not in a rush anymore, you never were. You might not finish this story tonight, but the elephants, they'll wait for you, hidden in vines, curled in paint, tucked into silence. You wake, if that's what this is, somewhere between the faint scratch of brush on parchment and the smell of old pigment melting slightly in the night warmth. The hasn't changed. Neither have you. But outside the window, that's not a window, it's painted on the wall. Remember, you hear something faint, bells. Tiny ankle bells, not royal trumpets, not soldiers marching, just dancers in the courtyard below. You rise slowly, careful not to knock over the tray of unfinished cups beside you. That'd be historically unforgivable. The artist asleep in the corner might forgive you, the emperor less so. The corridor is longer now, as if the building is growing with your interest. And you walk it slowly, barefoot still, the cool stone grounding you with every step. Down below in the moonlit courtyard, a dancer twirls, one ankle lifted in a slow spin, jingling like distant chimes. But you're not here for her tonight. You're watching the painter who sits just out of the light, sketching the folds of her fabric with a piece of charcoal so small it's basically a prayer. He's drawing her sorry, but not just the movement. He's adding something tucked in the pleats, an elephant, no bigger than your thumbprint wearing a jeweled headdress. It's subtle, of course. You'd miss it if you blinked or weren't half asleep or had any real attention span left. This was a time when symbolism was everything. Not in a grand save the empire way, but in a hide your true thoughts in plain view kind of way. Your major historical fact. During Shah's early reign, yes, the Taj Mahal guy, artistic commissions doubled. And so did hidden messages, mostly personal, political, and occasionally petty. Now, tonight's cultural curiosity. In the court, artists believed that painting certain animals, like tigers or elephants, on the inside of teacups would bless the tea with that animal's power. It was believed that sipping tea over an elephant's head made you wiser, calmer, and just a little heavier in spirit. Like drinking courage steeped at boiling point. Scholars still argue whether this was superstition, symbolism, or just a really specific flavor of artistic humor. Drink your tea. There's a tusk in it. You sit beside the painter now. He doesn't notice you, which is perfect. His fingers are smudged with ash and gold. His eyes dart between dancer and page. You wonder how many elephants he's hidden this year, probably more than people have noticed. And again, the silence stretches. But it's not empty. It's the sound of generations painting things you weren't meant to find, but now you have. It's just before dawn now, and everything's gone a bit blue. That blue hour where shadows thicken and the world forgets whether it's night or morning. You drift toward the royal kitchens, not for food, not really, but because someone said the best teacups are fired near the ovens. It sounds like a lie, but you're too curious to not find out. There's a narrow passage you hadn't noticed before. It smells like cinnamon, clay dust, and overly ambitious recipes. The kind that involve more than sense. Inside the kitchen, things are quieter than you expect. No frantic chefs, no shouting, just two old men sipping tea in the corner. Their beards are impressive, their gossip more so. They speak in slow Urdu with the kind of pauses that say, "We've seen too much but still love a good elephant joke." One of them holds a small ceramic bowl glazed delicate. Inside the swirl of blue and white, there's a hidden animal again, but not an elephant this time. A camel. "Oh, that one's a decoy," the man mutters half to himself. "The real elephant's in the glaze." And sure enough, if you tilt the bowl just right, the glaze itself curves into the faint outline of an elephant carrying a howdah. A royal seat. A throne on 4 legs. Your historical fact. The court potters developed secret glazing techniques to embed soft patterns that only emerged under candlelight. It wasn't magic, it was skill, math, and maybe a little too much free time. The obscure tidbit, court chefs and potters often collaborated. In fact, there's record of one feast where each dessert plate contained a unique animal motif hidden beneath the sweet. Think mango custard over a dancing peacock. Pistachio halwa above a sleepy goat. Historians still debate whether this practice was symbolic, a royal inside joke, or an elaborate form of portion control. If you didn't finish your dessert, you didn't see the elephant. Tragic. You sit cross-legged on the floor now. Someone passes you a teacup. It's warm, lightly spiced, and floral. You don't ask what's in it. You just hold it up to the dim firelight, rotating slowly. Though they're a tusk, barely a shimmer, but it's there, you've found it, again. And then, just like that, the taste changes. Slightly more comforting, slightly more awake, or maybe just slightly sleepier. Well, because here, even elephants hide. The light outside has fully committed to morning, but inside these walls, time still naps lightly. You step through a small, low doorway, one of those that makes you duck not just in posture but in presence. On the other side is the Imperial Garden. Not the big, ceremonial one with the fountains and symmetrical paths. No, this is the artist's garden. Tucked behind the main palace, it's half-wild, fully fragrant, and buzzing with the kind of bugs that seem like they'd also like to paint if given the tools. The ground here is soft with fallen petals and forgotten sketch paper. You pass a bench, wooden, slightly lopsided, and you notice a stack of early drafts. Each page bears the same scene, a royal elephant under a mango tree, but in every version something changes. One time the tree is too tall. Another, the elephant looks like it's wearing shoes. In the final sketch, the elephant is gone, but the folds in the mango leaves curve into the exact shape of its ears. Now you realize something, they didn't erase the elephant. They folded it into the world. Your historical fact, artists were trained in geometry, storytelling, and botany, not just brushwork. This meant that plants, animals, and architecture were often layered with meaning. A vine might be a lineage, a fruit a fate. Now today's cultural curiosity. There was once a painter who reportedly hid the same elephant 99 times in a single border design. It was considered a test of skill and a quiet protest against the emperor's demand for less whimsy. Scholars still debate whether this was true or simply an artistic myth passed down for giggles over slow tea. And there's that squirrel again, the one from the earlier mural. It's real this time, hopping between marigolds like it owns the place. You could swear it nods at you. Probably thinks you missed the elephant again. You sit on the bench now, the wood creaking slightly beneath you. The scent of crushed jasmine hangs in the air. You run your fingers across the last sketch, the one with no elephant, and feel the ghost of its outline beneath the ink. That's how they did it, the great artists. They didn't just paint, they implied. And somehow, that feels more powerful than seeing the elephant in full. You wander next into the dye room. It's darker than expected, part storage cellar, part alchemist's lab, with low light filtering through sheets of colored muslin hung from the ceiling. The place smells like crushed berries, old metal, and a little bit of ambition. The jars line the shelves, each filled with powders so vibrant they look radioactive. Vermilion, indigo, saffron, and tucked at the far end of the row, elephant gray, a soft, dusty pigment made from, well, no one is quite sure. It might be ash, might be ground up pearls, might be something much stranger. Here's your historical fact. Painters used over 150 natural pigments, some derived from minerals, some from plants, and a few from questionable origins. One famous blue was extracted from ground lapis lazuli imported from Afghanistan, more expensive than gold at the time. An obscure tidbit of the night, elephant gray wasn't just a pigment, it was a status symbol. Only senior painters were allowed to use it, and only on commissions for the emperor. The recipe was kept secret, passed down like a family heirloom or a particularly good mango pickle recipe. And yes, historians still argue whether elephant gray even existed, or whether it was a poetic metaphor made up in the letters of a particularly dramatic artist named. He once claimed a brushstroke made him cry for 3 days. We all process things differently. Though the artist in this room doesn't speak. He's mixing a pigment right now, slow circles with a mortar and pestle, grinding color into possibility. You watch his hands, steady and precise, like he's painting the air before the canvas even arrives. On the nearby table sits a half-finished teacup. Its surface is blank, but the rim holds a whisper of something beginning. The faint curve of an ear, or maybe just a vine, you blink, it disappears. Oh, he dips his brush, gray on white, a dot, then a curve, then nothing, he sets it aside. And somehow you know exactly what he just painted. Oh, even if you never see it. Now you follow the whisper of bells again, but this time they don't belong to dancers. They're tiny wind chimes hung from the awnings of the library. Yes, the palace had a library. Several, in fact, one for words, one for maps. And one your favorite for images that barely spoke but somehow said more. This is the visual archive, or what a modern museum might call the department of how did they even see that? The scrolls and folios are laid out across long tables, each carefully unrolled beneath glass so thin you can see the paper breathing underneath. It smells of saffron ink, sandalwood glue, and dust that has grown too proud to be swept. You lean over a manuscript, a depiction of a royal hunt circa late 1500s. Tigers, spears, drums, chaos, and yet, in the corner, quietly grazing behind a painted bush is an elephant, not the proud kind, the bored kind, probably wondering why everyone's chasing tigers when the mangoes are ripe. Your historical fact. In miniature paintings, background animals often served as subtle commentary. While emperors paraded as fierce lion hunters in the foreground, elephants in the back hinted at peace, patience, and the steady mind of rule. They were the unspoken punchline in a painting full of fanfare. An obscure cultural tidbit. Some elite artists used powdered pearls mixed with gum to paint the whites of the elephant's eyes. It didn't just sparkle, it caught candlelight in a way that made the creatures look alive. A glow that only appeared after dusk, when the paintings were shown during hushed evening gatherings. The scholars still debate whether these nightglow details were artistic flourishes or part of a mystical, almost ritualistic practice. Either way, the paintings were never meant to be viewed fully in daylight, like dreams or secrets. You shift to another scroll, this one a scene of women in the zenana. They play music, drink tea, gossip beneath silk canopies. But wait, there it is again. One of the tea trays has a pattern, a repeating vine looped around and around. No lives just ears. Elephant ears. Subtle enough to make you wonder if you imagined it, but that's the whole point. These artists didn't hide the elephants from you, they invited you to look longer. And isn't that what you're doing now? By now, you're almost fluent in this visual language. You start noticing shapes in everything. A fold in the carpet becomes a trunk. A loop in the script mimics a tusk. You could probably find an elephant in a spoon if someone gave you 5 minutes and dim lighting. The sun outside is climbing, but inside, the world remains cool and steady. You move into a narrow hallway barely wide enough for two, lined with framed studies of teacup patterns. Not full paintings, just snippets. Floral curls, rim designs, border tests, each one a whisper from the margins. There's one drawing that stops you, a simple vine, unfinished, but one tendril curls into a shape that's unmistakable. A baby elephant, trunk lifted, half hidden in the stem of a lotus. Your historical fact. Artists were known to use mirror imaging, painting a design one way, then its reflection opposite, to create balance and harmony. But they'd often sneak in slight differences, like one elephant awake and the mirrored one asleep, symbolizing duality, day and night, thought and dream. This obscure cultural gem. It was common to reward apprentices who spotted the most hidden animals in a master's painting. A sort of Waldo with divine purpose. Winners got honeyed sweets and their names scribbled tiny, almost invisible in the next page's margin. Historians still debate whether some of these names are even real, or just affectionate teases from older artists to younger ones. And to my clever fox who saw the elephant in the spoon. You lean in to examine the ink strokes. The paint has faded a little over time, but the energy is still there. The kind of energy that makes you want to stay quiet, still, present. The passing breeze, that eternal character in every scene, flicks the corner of the page slightly. It lifts, underneath, a second drawing. Look up. With a pattern so intricate it makes your eyes ache. And at the center, a teardrop-shaped elephant, entirely made of vines. While you breathe it in, you let it go, and the elephant stays. The hallway spills into an open courtyard again, this one framed with arches so delicately carved they seem to whisper as you walk beneath them. You pause under one, letting the light filter in stripes across your face. A bird lands nearby, chirps once, and flies off like it forgot what it came for. A servant passes with a silver tray of teacups, each one covered with a tiny lid to keep the scent in and the dust out. You watch as one of the cups tips slightly and you catch a glimpse, just a glimpse of a handle shaped like an elephant's tusk. Intentional, probably. Obvious, not at all. You follow the servant, not creepily, just curiously. He leads you to a small pavilion shaded by a climbing vine of red trumpet flowers. Beneath it, two young women sit cross-legged on cushions, a third holding a brush dipped in something amber and gleaming. They aren't court painters, not officially, but they've been trained in and now they paint for pleasure or maybe quiet rebellion. One is working on the underside of a teacup. Yes, the bottom of it. Because what's the point of decoration if you only notice it when you're awake? Your historical fact. It was not uncommon for noble women in the zenana, the women's quarters, to train in the arts, especially calligraphy and miniature painting. Though their work was often unsigned, some of the finest surviving pieces are believed to have been painted by royal women. A obscure cultural tidbit. In at least one recorded instance, a woman named Begum, the emperor's aunt, wrote an illustrated memoir. And rumor had it she always painted a tiny elephant under the bed in every room she drew as a sort of private joke. Historians still debate whether this was symbolic of memory, maternal strength, or just a recurring artistic tic. A doodle with dignity. You crouch beside the painter now. She's finishing the rim with a gold loop, then dots something barely visible inside the glaze. It's not a flower. It's not a leaf. It's a baby elephant curled into sleep. Hidden, perfect, silent. She doesn't look up, but you feel the echo of a smile. As if she knows you saw it. You're a little lost now, but in the soft, dreamlike way that doesn't require correction. The palace is big, bigger than it looks in books, bigger than your sense of direction. But every path seems to lead to something slower, quieter, and weirder. You step into what looks like a storage room, but smells too fragrant to just be crates. Turns out it's a wrapping room for gifts. Teacups mostly. Wrapped in silk, nestled in wood shavings, sometimes tied with strings soaked in saffron water so they smell like poetry. In one corner, an old man is wrapping a cup so delicately it feels ceremonial. His fingers move slowly, reverently, as if the cup is less object, more blessing. You ask, though not aloud, what makes this cup special. He doesn't speak, but he turns the cup ever so slightly, and there it is. In the swirl of the glaze, an elephant, but not just any elephant. This one is laughing. Your historical fact. The court was known for sending diplomatic gifts, often teacups, painted scrolls, or custom manuscripts, to foreign courts. These gifts were embedded with symbolism meant to convey power, wisdom, or gentle mockery. One emperor even sent a cup with a frog painted under the base to the king of a rival court who was known for never leaving his palace. Subtle, not really. But artistic, absolutely. An obscure tidbit, there are notes from court historians suggesting that artists were sometimes given emotion themes to paint into their animals. A calm tiger, a grieving deer, a joyful elephant, emotional realism through ornamental design. And yes, scholars still argue whether elephants can laugh. But then again, most scholars don't stare at cups all day. You take one last look at the laughing elephant. It's not showing teeth because that would be creepy. It's just got that subtle upturn of the eyes. The kind of smile that says, I know something you don't. And just like that, you feel it too. That quiet joy. The kind that hides in glaze. You find yourself on a quiet stairwell now, stone steps worn smooth by centuries of careful footsteps. There's no grand staircase here, no dramatic entrance. Just this winding passage tucked behind a curtain of embroidered linen. As it leads downward, deeper into the belly of the palace. Each step echoes like a soft drumbeat, the kind you feel more than hear. A rhythm for slowing down, a reminder that not all treasures are stored above ground. You arrive at what seems to be a vault, but the door is open, inviting, and entirely unguarded, because what's hidden here doesn't glitter, it glows. Shelves upon shelves of unused cups, plates, and painted tiles. Some are cracked, some incomplete, some masterpieces abandoned for a better idea. And there, near the back, is a low table covered in failed designs. You pick one up gently. It's a saucer unfinished, and you can see the ghost of an elephant mid-sketch. Just a suggestion of a foot, half a tusk, a fold in the ear. It wasn't discarded out of laziness. It was replaced by something subtler, even more hidden. Your historical fact. Artists often discarded early drafts when a more poetic or symbolic version emerged in the process. Finished works might take months, but the pile of not quite rights could grow endlessly. Some historians call them the true heart of the cultural tidbit. In some court workshops, it was tradition to hold a small farewell ritual for rejected artworks. A flower was laid on the piece, a brief silence held, and then it was shelved, never destroyed. Artists believed these works still carried energy. Some scholars still debate whether this was superstition or simply the equivalent of archive it, just in case. You sit on the stone floor beside the table now. The silence here isn't empty, it's full of maybes, of quiet ambition, of nearly elephants. And you begin to understand that hiding something doesn't mean losing it. Sometimes it just means waiting for the right person to see it. Eventually, you climb back into daylight. The sun is warm now, but not sharp. It rests on your skin like silk just pulled from water. You walk along the eastern wall, where the shadow of a lattice screen dances on the sandstone floor like it's learning a new alphabet. A young apprentice is sitting there, cross-legged in the sun, holding a teacup upside down. No brush in hand. No ink pot nearby, just the cup and a squint of concentration. You pause beside him. He glances up, sees you, and says, "It's there, but I can't unsee the trunk as a vine now." You both laugh quietly, the kind of laugh that doesn't need explanations. Your historical fact. In the final century of rule, the artists became bolder in their secrecy. Designs grew more abstract. The elephants became myths within myths, sometimes just a swirl of negative space or an echo in the shape of a leaf. A obscure cultural tidbit. In one recovered scroll, there's a documented competition among artists to paint an elephant so well hidden not even the emperor could find it. The winner was never revealed. Some believe the winning painting still hangs in a forgotten wing of the palace, its elephant unseen to this day. Historians still debate whether this contest ever happened, or if it was a legend invented by artists hoping to justify why their work was too subtle to notice. Though the apprentice flips the cup again. Maybe that's the point, he murmurs, that you never really find the elephant, you just keep learning how to look. Now you sit beside him, no rush now. And as the lattice shadows ripple across the wall, you think about all the elephants you didn't see. The ones hiding in petals, in glazes, in laughter. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the next one in your dreams. You've settled into the rhythm now. The soft pulse of this palace, the slow unfolding of story, the gentle puzzle of ink and shape. You're not so much walking anymore as you are gliding, carried by curiosity and the promise of another hidden elephant. You pass through a room filled with wooden screens. They're called, each carved with intricate lattice patterns. Light filters through them in overlapping circles, fractals of shadow cast like secret codes across the walls. And tucked into one of those patterns, there it is again. A perfect negative space between loops of teak. You pause, an ear, a trunk, an eye, all hiding between daylight and design. Your historical fact, screens weren't just decorative, they allowed for ventilation, privacy, and surveillance. Especially for royal women who could watch ceremonies without being seen. Some were carved so finely they doubled as sundials and star charts. And today's obscure delight. In a few rare cases, architects collaborated with painters to pre-plan light play on walls. At a certain hour, sunlight through the screen would form the silhouette of a known figure, like a king's profile or, yes, an elephant mid-march. Like a living shadow show once a day. And as usual, scholars still debate whether these effects were fully intentional or just very, very lucky. But when you've seen 5 elephants in a single hour, your faith in coincidence begins to fade. You sit by one such screen now, letting the light move over your hands. The pattern shifts every few seconds. And sure enough, for just a breath of a moment, the elephant appears again. Not loud, no, not obvious, but perfectly placed, like a punchline whispered by the past. You find a small brass door tucked behind a woven curtain, nearly invisible unless you're the sort who looks for elephants. Which, by now, you definitely are. The door leads to what looks like a private study, intimate, with high windows and shelves built into every available surface. There's a writing desk at the center, and beside it, a teacup resting in a shallow dish of rose petals. You're not even surprised anymore when, inside the dish's floral pattern, you spot the outline of a baby elephant reclining under a tree. The elephant has a smirk. Somehow. Your historical fact. Nobles often commissioned personalized teacups, with miniature illustrations matching their family crests, star signs, or, if they were feeling dramatic, portraits of their favorite hunting animals. Elephants were reserved for the most favored or politically powerful patrons. As obscure tidbit, there is one recorded incident where a noble refused tea because the elephant painted inside his cup was facing the wrong direction. It was considered a bad omen, like spilling salt or misquoting a poet at dinner. And yes, historians still debate whether that noble was genuinely superstitious, or just having a very dramatic afternoon. You settle into the chair at the desk. It creaks a little too politely. A journal lies open beside the teacup. The page shows no writing, just small ink tests. Tiny loops, flicks of the brush, shapes that might become letters, might become art. You lift the cup carefully and sip. The tea is cold now, but the flavor lingers. Cardamom, cinnamon, a hint of saffron. And at the bottom of the cup, a vine curls around the base, spiraling inward. You follow it with your eyes, it narrows, it twists. And there, right at the center, an elephant curled like a comma, asleep in the glaze. You exhale slowly, deeply. Because even the quietest things deserve to be found. The air in this part of the palace feels softer somehow. You're not sure why. Maybe it's the way the sounds seem padded, as if wrapped in cloth. Or maybe it's because you're surrounded by tapestries now, floor to ceiling, wall to wall. Some are faded, threadbare from centuries of quiet hanging. Others shimmer with threads of gold and beetle shell green, their patterns dense and hypnotic. At first, it's all leaves, flowers, paisleys. Then, as your eyes adjust, there it is. An elephant, just one, tiny, woven into the hem of a curtain where no one but the curious would ever look. You run your fingers gently across the cloth. The threads rise like tiny ridges under your touch. It's as though the elephant is hiding in texture, not just design. Your historical fact. Era textiles were among the most complex in the world, woven on vertical looms using silk, cotton, and even gold wire. Patterns were planned months in advance, sometimes with embedded narrative scenes. A single shawl might tell an entire epic if you had the patience to read it. An obscure detail. In one surviving tapestry fragment found in Lahore, a scholar identified 37 elephants, each hidden inside flowers, peacocks, or branches. The original artisan never left a signature but did leave a note tucked into the hem. Beauty is a test of those who notice. And yes, no surprise here. Scholars still debate whether that was a personal motto or just a poetic prank for future historians. You sit on a cushion beneath one of the larger hangings. Light filters through a small skylight above, illuminating a single gold thread that curves just so. You follow it upward. As elephant tail. So then a trunk. So then nothing. Now you smile, you don't need to see the whole animal, just the hint is enough. Though the presence is what matters. It's outside again. The garden air hits your lungs with that gentle herbal breeze you didn't know you missed. A servant walks past carrying a tray of washed cups, their surfaces still glistening with droplets of well water. You trail behind him quietly like a ghost of curiosity. He's heading toward the kiln house, the place where art gets its final form. The kiln isn't blazing right now, just warm coals and pale smoke curling upward like dreams leaving the surface of things. A woman in a linen wrap sits nearby, polishing the cooled cups with a soft cloth. She hums not a song exactly, just a rhythm, a tune with no lyrics. You watch as she tilts each cup toward the light, checking for flaws. Then yes, she pauses, one cup has a smear, she wipes, tilts again, smiles. Because the smear wasn't a mistake, it was a shadow, shaped like an elephant. Your historical fact: kilns were marvels of engineering. Some were portable clay domes that could be moved for court commissions. Firing required perfect timing, too much heat and the glaze warped, too little and the paint never surfaced. This obscure nugget: in one rare instance, a cup emerged from the fire with an unplanned but perfect outline of an elephant in the glaze. It was kept by the emperor himself and called the fire elephant. Artists tried to replicate the accident for years but never succeeded. And yes, historians still debate whether the fire elephant was real or a metaphor for divine inspiration that appears once, and only once, in a lifetime. You sit on the edge of the warm stone platform now, watching the woman continue her work. She lifts another cup to the sun, searching for light-buried stories. You wonder how many elephants she's seen today. You wonder how many you have seen. And more curiously, how many you missed. The sun is dipping lower now, casting that long, honey-colored light that makes everything feel more meaningful than it probably is. You find yourself near a hallway of alcoves, each one built for quiet reflection, tucked just wide enough for a pillow, a cup of tea, and the weight of one's thoughts. A young man sits in one of them, legs pulled up, sketchbook resting on his knees. He doesn't notice you, but you can see what he's drawing. Not a portrait, not a palace, just a tree. A neem maybe, sparse leaves, jagged bark. And near the base, nearly lost in the hatching, an elephant the size of a thumbtack. Lying down, sleeping, again, always sleeping. You sit across from him on the floor. The stone is cool beneath your legs, and a breeze slips through the corridor like a note passed between generations. Your historical fact: trees, especially neem and banyan, were sacred symbols in art, often standing for wisdom, shelter, and continuity. Painters would hide animals in their roots and branches to represent hidden meanings. Loyalty, memory, even reincarnation. Now, tonight's obscure twist: there was a brief phase during his reign when artists hid elephants inside trees exclusively. It's rumored he issued a challenge to his court painters: make a forest walk and I shall find no elephants. If I do, I'll double your commission. He never found all of them. The scholars still debate whether he stopped looking, or whether the elephant stopped appearing, afraid of being seen. Though the young man closes his sketchbook and sighs, not in frustration, but in that full-bodied way you sigh when you know the day is nearing its end. You stay a moment longer, staring at the wall across from you. Though there's a crack in the plaster, a shadow across it, and suddenly, though there's an elephant there too. In dusk, the palace exhales. Night has folded itself around the palace like a shawl, soft, weightless, and laced with jasmine and lamp smoke. You wander through one of the oldest courtyards now. It's quiet here, except for the occasional coo of a pigeon that didn't get the bedtime memo. There's a stone bench in the middle, partially worn smooth by a few hundred years of overthinking. You sit. There's nowhere else to be. In front of you is a fountain, dry now, its basin lined with mosaic tiles. Geometric patterns of blue, white, and faded green. You trace one line with your eyes, then another. The shapes repeat. They spiral, then shift. And yes, there it is, a tile pattern that loops into something rounder. A tusk, an ear, the hollow eye of an elephant nestled so delicately into the mosaic that you'd never find it if you looked directly. You can only see it from a slant, from a moment of stillness. Your historical fact. Architects used tile mosaics not just for color, but for storytelling. Certain palace floors were designed with symbolic creatures that only revealed themselves under moonlight or firelight, an artful surprise for wandering nobles with sleepless thoughts. An obscure tidbit. In Agra Fort, there's a forgotten corridor nicknamed Elephant Alley, not because elephants walked there, but because someone once found 13 hidden pachyderms in the floor tiles. Whether it was an artist's obsession or a prank is still up for debate. And yes, historians still don't agree on whether was ever officially mapped, or if it's a hallway that exists only in rumor and lucky glimpses. You stretch your legs now, gazing at the broken fountain, at the mosaic that doesn't need water to be alive. Because the elephant once seen can never be unseen. And in this strange palace, you're beginning to see them everywhere. You return without thinking to the workshop, the start. It's nearly empty now. Just a few dim lanterns flickering like tired eyelids. The scent of old ink lingers in the air like a promise not yet fulfilled. As at the far end of the room, someone has left a stack of finished works. Miniatures bound in leather folios. You lift one gently, open to the middle. It's a garden scene again. The kind you've seen dozens of times by now. A prince under a tree, courtiers playing chess. A bird on a branch too delicate to hold it. But your eyes are sharper now. Your heart slower, you scan the foliage, the patterns in the rug, the curve of the tree. There, between two pillows, is a painted vine that doesn't quite match the others. It curves, loops, and curls into the shape of an elephant's back. Though the prince is sitting against it, blissfully unaware or perhaps not. Your historical fact, Toward the end of the Golden Age, artists began embedding personal symbols into their work, messages, inside jokes, tiny rebellions. A slip of a line, a doubled ear, an elephant where a shadow should be. An obscure tale, one anonymous painter in the late 1600s is rumored to have hidden a full herd of elephants across 5 consecutive paintings, one in each corner, each more obscured than the last. Only one was ever confirmed, the others still waiting. And naturally, historians still debate whether the rest of the herd was real, or just another whisper passed through paint and paper. You close the folio gently. The lantern light warms the cover. You press your hand to it. Somewhere in there, 1,000 elephants sleep. And tonight they've let you in. The colors fade into that watercolor blur between day and night, where everything looks like it's been painted just a little too soft. You follow a trail of oil lamps now, just lit, glowing like small golden commas in a sentence that hasn't ended yet. They lead to a small dining courtyard, low tables, cushions scattered without formality. A few quiet conversations drift across the space, low, warm voices, punctuated by spoons clinking gently against the insides of porcelain cups. You sit alone but not lonely. Someone places a dish in front of you: saffron rice, a slice of mango, a folded napkin with a motif stitched in red. You blink, yes, even here, an elephant, tiny, curled into the hem. Your historical fact: banquets weren't just about food, they were performances. Each dish, plate, napkin, even the placement of cups followed a visual language. Hidden animals were part of that, symbols of blessing, protection, or gentle satire aimed at rival courts. An obscure story of the night. There was a documented moment where an elephant was hidden in every napkin at a wedding feast. The bride's family claimed it was for good luck and fertility. The groom's family, less charmed, insisted it was an elaborate insult, implying they were slow and heavy. And yes, historians still debate which side was right. The elephants, meanwhile, had no comment. You pick up your cup now, warm again, spiced, familiar. The glaze catches the lantern light, the inside is empty almost. But just as you tip it, you see it. A single golden brush stroke. Not a shape, not really. Just the suggestion of something that might have been an elephant, or might still be. And you realize, that's all this ever was. A game of looking. And you are finally playing it well. There's something about wandering old places at night. The way shadows lean in and architecture stops performing for daylight. It's honest now, a little dusty, a little tired, like an old friend in soft pajamas. You've drifted back toward the eastern colonnade, a long stretch of stone pillars that once hosted the court's morning discussions. Today it hosts quiet and a moth or two. Each pillar bears a carved pattern, floral at first glance, then geometric, then confusing. You pause at one, let your hand skim over the cold stone. You trace a pattern upward and suddenly pause. a spiral, a curve, two small ovals. And there it is, etched gently into the lattice of vines. An elephant again, but this one's different. It's upside down. Your historical fact. The court believed in artful disorientation. Some motifs were deliberately designed to look different from every angle, a kind of visual humility, reminding viewers that perception depends on where you stand. An obscure tidbit, one artist known only as of the South Garden was infamous for embedding creatures upside down, sideways, and even inside other animals. There's one recorded miniature where a peacock's feather contains a camel which contains an elephant. Possibly, it might just be a smudge. And yes, scholars still argue whether was a genius or just deeply. You lie down now on the long stone bench facing the pillars. Above you, stars emerge one by one, slow as secrets. You blink, the patterns on the pillar blur. The elephant vanishes again. You blink again, it's back. Well, that's how this palace works. You're always one breath away from discovering something. Or forgetting it. You wake not from sleep exactly, but from stillness. The kind that stretches and sighs and lets your thoughts walk a few steps ahead of you. A breeze moves past. It smells like ink and cardamom and something older. You wander into what might be the last courtyard you haven't seen. It's circular, bordered by painted walls and low candlelight. The mural here is enormous, an entire empire stretched across one wall. Mountains, rivers, roads, kings, courtiers, clouds, cities. While you step closer, and oh, it's all here. The whole story. But the thing that stops you is the border, the outer ring, where the artist, clearly unsupervised, has played a quiet game. The one elephant, the then the two, the then 6 and 12. Some are real. Some are shapes formed by clouds, by rocks, by shadows of trees. Some are so faint they could be tricks of the candle. Your historical fact, border paintings in the tradition were often left to senior apprentices, who in turn treated them as tests of wit and technique. Borders were less regulated, more playful. It was here and only here that artists could be subversive. Strange but true, a prince once commissioned a full-wall mural with the challenge, "Make my enemies into elephants and let no one notice." The artist obliged. Their faces appear trunked, tusked, dignified in the outermost edge. The prince loved it. His enemies didn't notice for years. And naturally, scholars still debate whether those likenesses were intentional, or if everyone was just imagining things. You sit beneath the mural now, back resting against cool plaster. All around you, the elephants keep watch. Or's asleep, or laugh quietly at your efforts. Because even here, in the biggest painting of them all, they're still hiding. Just as they were meant to. The night has fully arrived now, but it isn't dark. The moon hangs above like a polished silver coin, full, high, and far too curious. It lights the pathway in front of you as if the palace itself wants you to keep going, just a little farther. One more corner, one more story. You walk toward a tucked-away gallery behind the zenana. It's a narrow room, long and low-ceilinged, with shelves that hold only one kind of object, painted scrolls. Each scroll is rolled tight and tied with silk, labeled in ink that has faded into a warm amber haze. As a young archivist, half asleep, fully unbothered, glances at you, nods, and goes back to his own reading. You reach for a scroll without thinking. The string is delicate but unknots like it's been waiting for your fingers. You unroll it on the desk. The scroll sighs open with a soft crackle. It's a painting of a hunting scene. Yes, again, this empire really loved its dramatic animal chases, but something here feels different. There's the usual cast: kings, horses, wild cats in theatrical poses. But the forest behind them, it's alive with patterns. Ferns that aren't ferns, roots that twist just so, and there, beneath the paw of a fleeing deer, an elephant's footprint. Tiny, deliberate. Your historical fact: scrolls weren't just art, they were narrative documents meant to be read like visual poetry. Each section revealed slowly like chapters. Symbols embedded across frames would evolve, disappear, reappear. The elephant, for example, might vanish for 10 inches and then return in the tail of a horse's mane. An obscure cultural nugget: there was once a painter who claimed he could hide an elephant inside a single leaf. The claim was ridiculed until the scroll was finally found. The leaf's veins were the elephant's ears. The shadow was its trunk. And yes, to no one's surprise, scholars still debate whether it was really there, or whether the elephant was just wishful thinking made manifest. You roll the scroll back up, tie the ribbons. Some secrets are better left curled like that. Back outside now, you follow a gravel path lit by tall oil lamps that flicker like they're also ready to call it a night. The palace has quieted into that rare kind of hush you only hear in places that remember things. You come upon a small marble platform, a viewing terrace. The kind built for watching stars or monsoons or approaching relatives with awkward timing. You sit cross-legged, the stone beneath you still warm from the day, and in front of you, arranged in a careful circle, are 12 teacups. Different styles, different colors. Each one painted with a pattern that calls back to everything you've seen: a curl of vine, a splash of glaze, a rim with gold so faint it might be memory. No one is here, no artists, no emperor, just you and the cups. You begin turning them over, one by one. First, a vine that curves into a tusk. A second, a handle shaped like an ear. A third, nothing until the light hits just right. Then, a shadow, a trunk. Your historical fact: near the end of the period, tea service sets became a full art form of their own. Potters, painters, and metalworkers collaborated to produce suites of cups, trays, and spoons, all with subtle symbolic harmony. The elephant became a mark of continuity, used only once per set. A obscure tale, there's one recorded set where the elephant appeared only when the cups were arranged in a circle, rim to rim. The lines on each cup completed the figure, like a divine puzzle. Drink from them separately and you'd never know. And yes, scholars still argue whether this was brilliant design or just coincidence. But when the cups were reassembled 2 centuries later and the elephant reappeared, even the skeptics went quiet. You finish the circle. The elephant completes itself before you. And for a moment, this long, strange story feels whole. A cool wind snakes around the edge of the terrace, brushing past your face like a polite reminder. You've wandered deep into the night. The kind of hour when even time feels sleepy and shadows have started to stretch their arms. You decide to retrace your steps, not to leave, just to remember. And as you pass the once more, you hear soft voices. Laughter muffled by thick walls and old fabric. You peek in, a few artists remain gathered in a loose circle on the floor. They're not painting. They're drinking tea from misfired cups, slightly chipped, imperfect, too strange for the emperor but too charming to toss. One of them is sketching idly on the floor with chalk. A single line, then another, a swirl, a loop. You know it now, it's an elephant, of course it is. Your historical fact. Off-duty hours in the were often filled with informal competitions. Artists challenged each other to draw animals using only a few brushstrokes. Some claimed to be able to paint an elephant in just 3 dots and 1 curve. Whether it looked like an elephant was another matter entirely. The delightfully obscure detail. There's a surviving letter from a supervisor scolding the apprentices for drawing too many elephants on walls, benches, sleeves, and one unfortunate goose. The letter ends with, "Elephants belong in cups, not on livestock." And scholars, as you might expect, still debate whether the goose was ever real. You sit with them now, silent but welcome. Someone hands you a cup. The tea is stronger here, spiced heavier, like a secret that took a little longer to brew. You glance inside, no decoration, no vine, just tea. But you smile anyway. Because now, you don't need to see the elephant. To know it's there. You drift once again toward the older wing of the palace, the one rarely entered, with doors that creak like old bones and windows too stubborn to close. Inside, you find a room filled with ledgers. Stacks of scrolls, receipts, notes from emperors and architects and artisans with very neat handwriting. It smells like dust, clove, and a kind of ink no one uses anymore. You pick up a bound ledger marked simply, "Teacups, Imperial Decorative." The entries are methodical. Cup 213, rim gold, floral edge, no motif. Cup 214, special commission, blue-white elephant in petal. Cup 215, gifted to envoy, unknown motif, broken in transport. Each line holds a memory that feels so much heavier than ink. You flip the pages slowly, reverently, like they might flake apart. Then one entry stands out. Cup 248, design lost. Believed to contain elephant in glaze, only visible when tea cooled fully. The marginal note written in a different hand. I'm still watching for it. Your historical fact. Court records often included artistic details and inventory tracking for even the most mundane items, cups, rugs, sleeves of robes. These weren't just objects. They were part of the palace's emotional ecosystem. An obscure little whisper. There was a cup rumored to contain an elephant so subtle it took 5 years before someone noticed. The design wasn't painted, it was a flaw in the clay. The artist didn't even know it was there. But once spotted, the cup was elevated to sacred status. And yes, historians still argue whether this was an accident, a miracle, or the palace simply deciding to reveal its own jokes on its own time. Now you close the ledger. Now you don't need to search for the cup. You've seen so many already. Well, what matters now isn't the findings. It's the learning to look. So somewhere in the palace, a stringed instrument plays a single meandering note. Not a song, just a sound. A slow vibration that hangs in the air like steam over tea. You follow it. It leads you to a room with no walls, just 4 carved screens open to the garden, the night, and the stars. The sky above is the color of bruised velvet. You lie back on a low couch, and the cushions welcome you like you've returned from something meaningful, even if it was just the hallway. In front of you, a servant with steady hands sets down a teapot, and next to it, a cup unlike the others. It's larger, heavier, matte, not glossy, unpainted but clearly shaped with intent. You lift it gently. The outside is plain, the inside. Nothing. Or something. You tilt it again and again. They're barely there, a spiral in the ceramic. It's not glaze, it's not paint, it's pressure. The way the potter's fingers pressed the clay. An elephant, not made of color or lines, but of absences. Your historical fact. Some of the most revered potters worked without color. Their skill was judged not by decoration but by balance, weight, and the subtlety of their fingerprints. They called it ghost work. An obscure treasure of the night. In the collection of a small Delhi museum, there exists a plain cup with no visible mark until it's filled with warm tea. The steam causes slight expansion, and only then on the interior wall an elephant's outline appears. It lasts for 20 seconds, no more. And yes, scholars still debate whether it was intentional, or if the potter simply drank a lot of tea and got lucky. You sip from the cup now. It's warm, earthy. It tastes like a patience. And when you look inside again, the elephant is gone, but you still feel its shape. The night is very old now. The kind of late that isn't really night anymore, it's the beginning of something else. You're walking again, slowly, feet bare, floor smooth. The corridor leads to a final chamber, round, domed, painted like the inside of a dream. The ceiling is filled with stars, not painted stars, real ones, visible through tiny perforations in the dome. A table stands in the center. On it, a single cup, the final one you suspect. It's resting on silk, deep blue, embroidered with the shape of a banyan tree whose roots curl back into the fabric like rivers folding in on themselves. You approach gently like you're about to wake something. Though the cup is strange, unlike the others, it has no base, no rim. It curves in a spiral like a shell, or the memory of a cup if you whispered it in clay. You hold it up to the stars above. And you say nothing. But the stars shine through the cup. Then they're outlined by starlight and elephant. Its back formed by the curve. Its legs shaped by light. Your historical fact. Toward the end of the empire, art became more ephemeral. Painters turned to smoke painting, water etching, and other techniques meant to fade with time. They called it impermanence design to mimic the fragility of empire. An obscure echo, a scroll titled The Elephant That Cannot Be Held, was found in a ruined Haveli. No image inside, just a line of text. The cup will remember it for you. And yes, no one agrees on what that means. But somehow you do. You set the cup down. Not because the story over, but because it's folded into you now. You've found the elephant. Or maybe it found you. You sit quietly beneath the dome, wrapped in the strange calm that only comes after hours of wandering a world that asks nothing of you but attention. The stars above flicker gently, and for a moment they seem to shift. You wonder how many eyes have looked up at this same ceiling. How many hands have held these same cups? How many elephants have been missed? Beside you, folded neatly, lies a cloth-bound book, its corners soft with use. You open it to a random page. Inside, sketches, dozens, each no larger than a coin, each some part of an elephant, not whole ones, just parts, a foot, a trunk, an ear caught mid-flap, a tusk curving into a vine. None are labeled. None are signed. But each one holds the same gentle spirit. You saw me, that's enough. Your historical fact. In the final years of influence, many court artists went unnamed. Their work continued quietly, diligently, but they began leaving signatures only visible under moonlight or painted in ink so pale it could only be seen from an angle. Not anonymity, just humility. An obscure pearl for tonight. In one recovered artist's notebook, a single line appears between sketches. As if I am not remembered, let the elephant be. And yes, historians still puzzle over the identity of the writer. But perhaps they were never trying to be known. Perhaps they just wanted their elephants to live on. You flip to the last page, it's blank. But if you tilt it just right, there, a faint outline barely pressed into the page. An elephant walking away. No trunk raised, no flourish. Just moving forward. And somehow that's the most beautiful one of all. You're not sure when you stood up again. You're not sure when your footsteps became lighter. But you find yourself walking a familiar path now, back through the corridors and archways that once seemed too quiet. And yet now, you hear them. Brush strokes, low laughter, ink settling in its dish, a cup placed gently on wood. It's all still happening. The palace never stopped breathing. You return to the first room, the very first, where the light fell like silence and the brush dipped into lapis dust. A new artist sits there now, not the one from before. This one is older. His hand trembles slightly as he paints, but the stroke lands true. You peer over his shoulder. He's painting a vine, wrapping up the stem of a cup. And at first it's just a curl, a flourish. Then he adds a curve. Then a shadow. And you know before it's even finished what it will be. Your historical fact. Some artists trained their apprentices by making them draw the same image hundreds of times, not to perfect the image but to dissolve the ego, to make the line effortless, weightless, like thought. Let's obscure warmth for this hour. In one family lineage of court painters, elephants were always passed down as the first shape a child learned to draw. It was said that if they could get the ear right, the rest would come. And as always, historians debate whether this was a rule, or just a family myth retold because it made the story. You watch the artist finish the line. He sets his brush down, doesn't look at you, doesn't need to. You step back. The cup is complete. And in it, the elephant. Not hidden, not loud. Just quietly there. Waiting for someone who took the time. To notice. You step out into the garden once more, but something feels shifted. Not changed exactly, just clarified, as though your eyes, your breath, your sense of stillness have all quietly realigned. You notice how the moonlight pools unevenly across the flagstones. One patch glows brighter, not from the moon, but from reflection, scattered light bouncing off a silver tray left behind. On it, a half-empty cup, still warm. You lift it, it isn't decorated, not at first glance, but it's heavier than it should be, balanced, thoughtful, as if it holds more than tea. And inside, just beneath the surface, is a swirl, a distortion in the glaze, a ripple in the shape of a memory. You don't even try to name it now. You just know. It's always an elephant. And yet never the same one twice. Your historical fact. In the final century of the empire, cup makers became philosophers of form. One potter claimed he could trap time in a bowl by shaping it as the crescent shapes the sky. His pieces were simple, weighty, and always slightly off balance, so they'd lean gently toward the drinker as if to whisper. A obscure murmur, a faded scroll in Lucknow describes a ritual in which tea was poured into a cup, not for drinking, but for seeing like a mirror. When the steam cleared, the reflection was said to reveal your future. If you saw an elephant, it meant you would be remembered. And yes, historians still debate whether this was a spiritual practice or just a very poetic form of hydrating. You set the cup down, you don't need to drink from it. You've already taken in everything it held. Not liquid, not prophecy, not just a presence. You walk away slowly, the moon trailing behind like a loyal thought. You return finally gently to where you began, the marble corridor, the brush-silent studio, the scent of ink and wet stone. But this time, no one is here. The room is still, not empty, just full of rest. A breeze enters from the left, you turn. There on the table is a sketchbook left open. Not forgotten, just waiting. You lean over it. Inside are 10 painted teacups, each different, some ornate, some plain, some cracked. But each one bears the same quiet signature. A shape, a line, a curve. An elephant. Always an elephant. And as you look closer, you realize they aren't all hidings. Some are bold, some are tired. Some are incomplete. One is just a single trunk, as if the rest wandered off the page. Your historical fact. In the twilight of the court, some artists stopped hiding their symbols. They placed them openly, sometimes even centrally, in what became known as the Confession period, an era of personal art where cups became journals and glazes became truths. Its obscure echo, a final diary entry from a painter reads, "I no longer hide my elephants. I place them where I want them seen. If the world closes its eyes, let that be their burden, not mine." And yes, scholars argue over whether this painter was brave, resigned, or just very tired. But tonight, it doesn't matter. Now you sit at the table. A clean sheet lies beside the open sketchbook. A brush rests in ink. You reach for it. Your hand knows what to do. Not to draw something beautiful, just something real. A little lines, a curl, a shape that says, "I was here and I noticed." It's nearly morning now. That soft, slow hour when the sky doesn't so much lighten as stretch. A faint blush along the horizon, like the world is quietly remembering its own shape. You're walking again, barefoot on cool stone, retracing the outline of your journey. Not because you're lost, but because you've become part of the palace's rhythm. And every few steps, a detail returns to you. A gold thread. A flicker of glaze. A sleeping elephant in a shadow you didn't catch the first time. You pass a servant lighting fresh lamps even as the sun waits. She nods politely as if to say, yes, it's still worth it to keep searching. Even now. You arrive in a quiet chamber that holds only one object. A teacup, centered on a low table made of inlaid sandalwood. This one is different, smaller maybe. but its presence is enormous. Now you kneel before it carefully, slowly. Now there's no rush. Is inside the cup, nothing painted, nothing carved, just the faintest impression of heat long gone, a ring left behind by what once was. Oh, and yet there it is. An elephant in negatives, formed only by the places where time pressed more deeply. Your historical fact. There was a rare firing technique used by only a handful of potters called memory glazing, where a second, invisible layer of clay was applied over the design, only to be revealed through wear, heat, or age. It's obscure story. One imperial artist, blind in one eye, was said to sculpt by memory alone. His final series of cups bore no visible elephants. But weeks later, faint outlines began to emerge where the glaze thinned, like ghosts surfacing through steam. And yes, historians still don't agree whether this was technique, accident, or legend built from the hopes of those who wanted to believe art remembers. Now you lift the cup, it's light now. Because it no longer holds tea. As it holds time. You step outside as the sky breaks open into pale blue. A soft orange flush hugs the tops of the trees. The first birds begin their conversations, most of which sound like they're either gossiping or asking where breakfast is. Though the garden is still dew damp, the air freshly brewed. You make your way to the last courtyard, the very last one. It's round, quiet, open to the sky, and in the center a pool, still, mirrored, empty except for reflection. Now you walk to its edge and look in. Now you expect to see your own face. But instead, now you see a shadow shaped like an elephant. As it moves slightly when you breathe. As it deepens when you line in. Now no tricks, no paint. Just you. And the way your presence curved the world into something ancient and kind. Your historical fact. In gardens, water was considered a form of narrative. Pools and channels weren't just decoration. They were designed to reflect and distort to carry meaning. In some cases, gardens were mapped to mirror constellations. Walking through them was like reading a cosmic book with your feet. An obscure footnote. In a private letter, one poet wrote, "Today I saw an elephant in the pond, but there were none nearby. I believe my joy made one appear." And scholars, they still argue whether that was metaphor or madness. But maybe that's the wrong question. Because here you are, is in front of a pool, with a shadow that isn't yours. And somehow, that feels like the most truthful part of this long, quiet journey. While you sit at the edge, not waiting, not searching, just being. You no longer need to find the elephants. Because now, you understand they were never really hiding. They were simply waiting for you to slow down enough to see. The palace is awake now, but only barely. The sounds are soft, footsteps on wet stone, doors being opened gently, a broom sweeping petals into a neat little pile that will be scattered again by the breeze before noon. You walk back to the first hallway. The one where the air smelled like ink and old decisions. Where the vines curled along the walls and you touched the cool stone like it had something to say. Oh, it still does. Only now you understand its language. Not through translation, but through stillness. You pass the mural again, the one you never really figured out. The one with the woman holding a cup, the parrot on her shoulder, the vine in the background. And now you see it. The parrot's shadow is shaped like an elephant. It's subtle, impossible, but there. You smile not because it's clever, not because it's hidden, but because you finally stopped looking and started seeing. Your historical fact, some of the last artworks before the empire's full decline were unfinished, left incomplete either by circumstance or design. But within them were some of the most intricate, meaningful motifs suggesting the artists knew endings didn't need closure, just presence. A final obscure truth. One scroll bears a single painted phrase. The elephant does not vanish. The eyes forget to follow. And of course, no one agrees on who wrote it. But by now, you don't need to. You sit once more. No cup in hand. No sketchbook open. Just you and 100 elephants resting in the stillness between details. They're not loud. They're not missing. They're right here. Like wonders. Like memory. Like the soft sound of a brushstroke you'll never hear, but somehow feel. Even now. And so, you've wandered the long, curling corridors of an empire that painted its secrets in the spaces between flowers and vines. You've touched teacups still warm with memory, turned pages that whispered their stories in glaze and gold, and found elephants, sleeping, smiling, shrinking, and expanding, hidden in the quietest folds of history. Some were real. Some were myths. Some were nothing more than the way the light bent on a wall at dusk. But that's the way truth works, isn't it? Not always declared, not always signed. Just gently placed for those who move slow enough to notice. So now, let your shoulders soften. Let your breath fall into the rhythm of silk on stone. Let your eyes grow heavy, not with strain but with stillness. You are not required to finish this thought. You are not expected to remember every fact. The elephants will wait. The vines will curl again. The cups will keep cooling. And if you wake, they'll still be here, hiding in the glaze, wrapped in petals, floating on the surface of the very next cup. But for now, let the ink settle. Let the paint dry. Let your heart beat slow, until all the elephants in your mind I'll curl into sleep. A good night, dreamers. And thank you for noticing.